Hi everyone. This short video will cover our first unit project, the nonfiction personal narrative. So for the first unit, you're going to be writing a personal narrative. This is a piece of creative nonfiction. You can use any format you'd like. You could use any kind of genres within it you like. You should use your textbook for some guidance and the readings in the textbook for inspiration. Other than that, I thought it would be helpful to go over some tips and hints for the process you can undertake to create this first project. So the first thing that you really need to do is think about finding your topic. It's really important as you're thinking about undertaking this project that you give yourself time to think. So really give yourself time to brainstorm. Make a list of all of the events in your life or all the possible things you could write about. You could look about thinking about free association. You could look at old pictures to kind of jumpstart your memory. Or another way to really kind of brainstorm is to be really present in your life as you are and think about, why do you do the things that you do now? What's the reason for that? How is that seated in your past? If you want a writing prompt that can help you, you could think about a moment I will never forget is. And then really just kind of jog your memory and get as many ideas out as you can. Oftentimes, it's not that first idea that is the best idea to write. Oftentimes, your best idea, or the one that's going to really make for a powerful essay, is going to come after you've warmed up a bit. You want to make sure that the moment is meaningful. So as you're brainstorming, you want to start thinking about, how did this moment or this memory shape you or change you in some way? All narratives have to do with the idea of change. So if the moment didn't affect some sort of change, it's probably not going to make for a very good story. Think about how this moment or this memory still affects you. Does it pop back up in your life as you go along from day to day? Or how did it change the path of your life? Again, that emphasis on change is going to be really important. In addition to thinking about how the memory changes you, you're going to want to think about how you make your very personal, very unique memory universal. You might think about what other similar moments others might have had. And one way to do this is to think about, how does this memory tap into more universal emotions? Emotions like joy or fear or pain or happiness. Those emotions that we all feel can help you make a connection with your reader who might be unfamiliar with the memory that you're thinking about or the experience that you had. Now, our next step is research and develop, which might seem odd considering that this is a personal memory. But during your pre-writing process, it's really important that you're setting the stage for successful writing. This is one instance where I would really not suggest writing by the seat of your pants. When we talk about research, we're really talking about finding information. So you want to think about, is your memory true? I don't know about you, but I have lots of events or memories in my past that when I talk to my brothers or my parents, they remember things in very different ways. So talking to other people, getting other people's perspectives of what happened, and just making sure that your basic understanding of what did happen is true is really important. You can think about setting, characters, and events. And then the other thing that you want to do is you want to develop kind of a working toolkit for your writing. So finding the details before you start writing so that once you start writing, you can just kind of go. So things you want to think about are setting. You might want to do some quick word sketches to describe the setting. Focus on figurative language to bring the place to life, because we can have a really kind of plain, I was in a room that was white. Or we can think about the senses. What do you see in that room? What do you hear? What do you feel? What might you smell? What do you taste? Even if it's just the taste of the mint gum you have, or the sour taste in your mouth that comes from fear. Really thinking about putting yourself in the moment and doing some quick setting sketches is really going to help you when you start to do that, the final draft. You also want to think about events in the story. So write the entire story out, start to finish, and try to nail down all the times, events, and actions in the kind of most plain and neutral way as possible. You're going to be able to use this as a guide later, especially if you decide that what you really want to do is write something that's out of chronological order, or you want to write something where you're kind of flashing back and forward, where you're flashing back to a memory over and over again. Having the story kind of written in a very neutral, factual way before you start can really help. Another thing that can help are character sketches. Taking a moment to do some quick, outlines of who the different people in your narrative are going to be, how those people would look to you, how those people look to themselves, and really even thinking about how other people would have experienced, understood, or remembered the events of the story. Again, that goes back to this idea of researching and developing, really kind of understanding how much our memory plays tricks on us and the difference between memory and kind of really what happened. Those are really interesting things to play with in your narrative essay. Once you have your basics, you want to think about plotting and planning. And again, I really do think that this is not a project that you just want to sit down and start writing, because order creates meaning and impact. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a couple people in my life that anytime they try to tell me a story about their day, it is just the most god-awful boring thing, because they start at the beginning and they tell me every excruciating detail. And by the time they get to the end, I just have stopped caring. So you don't want that to happen with your personal narrative. You want to think about what are some ways you could play with the ordering of events and how you're going to reveal information. So how can you grab the reader's attention? How do you process the events of the past now versus then? I mean, if you're going back to your childhood, a 5-year-old experiences things very differently than, a 20-year-old looking back to your 5-year-old self. And that difference between how we process information can make for a really interesting way to order your story. You can also think about how can you use confusion to build interest. Sometimes our memories, as we experience them in the past, were very confusing, and we only understand them from the present. So you can think about how can you lead your reader on a real journey. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. There's some information in our textbook and plenty of stuff you can find online. But some ideas, you could begin with an image. So you can give the reader a picture and then move out from there. It might be a place, it might be a person, it might be an event, but it's really important that if you're going to do this, that you return to that image regularly, and especially at the end, so that you can bring us to that full circle moment. You could begin in the middle of things, starting in the middle of the action. Something is happening and you kind of throw the reader right in, and then you kind of rewind back to the beginning. So really you kind of can create interest by starting with a cliffhanger, backing us up and seeing how we get to that point before we move on to see what happens to the end. That's a really common way that people who are writing both nonfiction and fiction can create interest in a narrative. You can also think about just doing a straight chronological narrative, but it's really important that you start with an intriguing opening. You want to begin right when something is changing. You don't want a lot of lead up and background. Go ahead and think about using flashbacks or memories within the narrative to give background rather than overloading your reader with information right at the very beginning. But you can't do that kind of off the top of your head. So really sketching out an outline, or if you're the kind of person that works on like a cluster or a diagram narrative, having some sort of plan and thinking about why are you going to give this information? What effect do you want the information to have on the reader? What emotions are you trying to elicit? And how are you going to get those emotions out? And then once you're ready to draft and revise, write it all out. And remember, the number one rule of creative writing, or really any writing, is that writing is revising. That first draft is just a starting point. Once you have the draft, you want to start questioning the draft and have questions prepared for your critique partners and your peer reviewers so that you get the feedback that you want. You're going to review that feedback and then revise, revise, revise. So I hope that's given you kind of some help in getting started and thinking about how you want to start this nonfiction personal narrative. The sky is the limit here, as long as it is a story about your life or something in your life, as long as you are detailing some sort of change or evolution. You can really think about presenting this any way you'd like. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or ask them in class.